We're back with the state of the SEL, and it feels so good to be hitting record again for one of these videos. I have honestly missed being able to talk about the Southeastern Esports League, and I honestly think my roommates are happy as well that I now have an outlet for all of my SEL information instead of just talking about it to them constantly. So, today, I'm Mr. Bepic, of course. Most of you probably know that. And we're going to be talking about the SEL Season 4 Spring Split because it starts this week. We're going over the Rocket League groups. We're going over all the roster changes in Rocket League, point distribution in Rocket League and Valorant, new teams, new formats. There's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to stop introing this video and I'm just going to get into the meat of it. Now, the way I'm going to split up this video is going to be talking about Rocket League first, then some Valorant later, showing them some love, and I'm going to be divvying up the teams that I'm talking about into the groups that they have been sorted into for Rocket League. So, for those that don't know the format, go watch this format video right here. I spent a long time recording it, not really, but our new editor, Eli, did a really good job putting it together, so go watch that if you're unfamiliar with the format. And so, without further ado, we're talking about Group 1, which, if you watch the draw show, you know is the group of death. It is insane, the level of talent in this group, and I honestly don't know if I can accurately predict the order of this group. And that is probably a given. It's probably the case for all these groups, knowing my background in predictions, but I'm going to try. I'm giving you my power ranking. That's the order in which I'm going to be talking about teams, talking about their points earned in the fall split, and the roster changes. So, here we go. Group of death. First up, the reigning runner-ups in King University. They are making a somewhat significant roster change, as for the bulk of last season, Big Wade played instead of Storm, and for this season for King, in all competitions, he will be back in the starting lineup for Turbo, which is a change, as Turbo played in all SEL matches. In the fall split, King earned 32 points, their second place finish, but with Big Wade in, I don't really know how far down that drops King, because they're still a really good team with Wade playing. This is not a slight to him, but they're not the same team that they once were. That came in second place in the fall, was a top 40 team in North American CRL for the bulk of last semester. And so I'm keeping my eye on them. I still have them as the top team in the group of death, but it's not by much, because the next team behind them is a team that almost beat them in Game 5 at full strength in Round 1 of the lower bracket in playoffs in the fall. And that's the Florida Gators. They're returning the same lineup of Kyan, True Raid, and Larry. And I think them getting dropped top 16 in playoffs was a fluke. They got a really bad draw with their uppers and lowers matches, both going to Game 5, both against great teams, and I expect them to do big things going forward. I honestly have them as a LAN team when all the dust settles and all the points have been distributed, so excited to watch them. But third in my rankings of the group of death, the University of Kentucky, who are making some serious changes. Ty and Doofy gone. Doofy graduated. Ty's taking a gap semester and then transferring. So he'll be back in the SEL more than likely after he finds a new home next school year. But getting the call up, the starting lineup, are Fern, who played on the Kentucky B team last semester, and Huds, who subbed in for the occasional UK series. So Kentucky has a lot to work through for Unfriable Apple's senior semester, and I have them as third in this group, but this is where things really start to get shaky for me, because Auburn is right on their heels, and they've made some changes too, but I still think they are right there with Kentucky. Same kind of situation. Bro Turkey graduated. Hums, who was in the starting lineup in the fall split, has been benched for the start of the spring split, at least the very start, before the SEL has started, because as far as I know, Vroko is the only returning starter that's solidified, and then Mango and Dreskel are getting called up to the Auburn Navy A team. They're both good players, but losing Bro Turkey is a hit, because he has been on Auburn Navy since I think before I was a caster for the university. So it's been a long time since there was no Bro Turkey on Auburn Navy. So they have some recovering to do. And now you're going to see why I'm calling this group the group of death, because next up is South Carolina Garnet, who were just outside being a playoff team in the fall split. And they've made a change. T-Man is no longer in the starting lineup. I think he just has a too busy a semester this semester. And so SJT is getting called up from the bench and playing in the starting 3 for Garnet. So I don't entirely know how much it's going to drop them at first, but being a fringe top 16 team, I really couldn't put them above Kentucky and Auburn despite the changes those two teams made. But they will definitely be fighting for one of those upper LCQ spots in this Group 1 alongside Oklahoma. And this is a really weird team that I don't know how they're going to perform, because Oklahoma made a complete roster change. Maver, Logical, and Piranha are the 3 starters going into the spring semester, but their coach, Real Albedo, was mentioning to me that Will, who's on the bench right now but was starting last semester, might get called up at some point this season. So Bono and B-Darbs are gone. Goodbye, Bono. Longest standing one roster player in SEL history, and that'll probably be the case for a little while. But Oklahoma is returning Maver as a starter, as they started in Season 3 for Oklahoma, and then Logical was on the bench, I think a couple of seasons for the Sooners. Piranha's new, and Will being on the bench, I don't really know what's going to happen with that lineup, so we'll see. But right behind them, another team making an almost complete roster move in Clemson. Masau's the only returner again. Rest in peace, Snipes. He's helping on the back end of the SEL now, no longer playing. But it was supposed to be Masau, Darth Pepe, and Wheezy this semester. But Wheezy and Darth Pepe, for whatever reason, weren't able to play Rocket League this semester. So Kinovo's getting called up from the B team, and Chosen One is going to be playing his first semester for Clemson. If you want a preview of what this team looks like, as well as Auburn and Florida and King, you can watch the VOD to my Monday Night Lights show matches, as Clemson played UAH Blue and Florida played Auburn. It's a good series, and I would highly recommend going back and seeing that if you're curious as to what these rosters look like at the moment at least. But the final member of the group of death is the University of North Georgia, one of 4 completely brand new teams to the SEL this semester. We returned 26 of the top 32 from the fall split in the SEL, 4 of them being brand new and 2 of them having played in the SEL prior, just coming back after missing the fall split. So welcome UNG, you get a very happy welcome being placed in this group of death. So I wish you well. Next up, and I'm gonna give all these groups kind of snappy names, the 4 that I'm talking about here. This is what I deem the group of roster consistency. As of the 8 teams in this group, we have 1 completely fresh team to the SEL, and then 5 of the 7 left did not make a roster change, which 18 of the 26 returning teams to the SEL made roster changes. So 5 of them being in this group is a little shocking. 5 of the 8 remaining, that is. But first up, reigning champs, Florida State University, Fries, Luigi, and Tricks. They need no introduction. I've got them as the top team in this group. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be considered a top 2 team in the SEL going into the spring split, and really the only team that I have in that top 2 alongside them we'll talk about a little bit later, and they deserve it. But right underneath them, again, not making a change, are the South Carolina Gamecocks, who are really developing a rivalry with Florida State again, playing them in groups after way back in Season 2, playing them twice in playoffs, denying an incredible underdog run from the Seminoles, and South Carolina ended up winning that season with Florida State playing second. Then they were in the same group stage in the last split, where South Carolina won that series in 5. So Florida State has had the better results in the SEL of late, but South Carolina have the last 3 matchups over Florida State to their name. So that'll be a very interesting series when that ends up being played during the regular season. And then our third team, Cumberland, making a roster change, which is a little surprising considering how stout they were with Skyline, Magic, and Aurora as the starting 3. But And this is not confirmed, but what I believe to be internal friction. Aurora's been benched, put on the B team this semester. Cumberland Black, another really good Cumberland Rocket League team. And Super Smurf has been called up from that B team to play on Cumberland Maroon. So I'm very interested to see how that change affects this team, because on paper, Cumberland should be rated higher than South Carolina in this group, but I value roster consistency over roster changes. And so Cumberland finished top 6 in the fall, but with this change, I'd bump them below South Carolina just because South Carolina's been playing together for a long time, and Cumberland, they're bringing in a change to this spring split. So keeping a close eye on them. Fourth in this group, Alabama. Again, not making a change, keeping that roster consistent, which it's a roster full of inconsistencies, so I don't know how much or how well that word applies. So I've got them fourth in this group, but I could really see them playing up to competition and fighting for a top 2 spot, or playing down a little bit and maybe getting caught in 5th place or something like that, starting on the lower side of the last chance qualifier. But we'll see what happens with them. Right below them, Louisiana Tech, again, keeping the same roster as last semester. They were a solid team that, similar to South Carolina Garnet, just barely missed out on a top 16 berth in playoffs, just due to the last chance qualifier chaos. And that is kind of the theme of these 3 teams we're talking about underneath Cumberland, South Carolina, and Florida State, because Montevallo was the same deal. No change in roster, barely missed out on playoffs, and I think they could also be fighting for a maybe top 2 spot if they're really popping off, but definitely a 3rd, 4th spot to start on the upper side of the last chance qualifier. Next up, Wake Forest, who's a returning team from the fall split, changing the roster just a little bit. Thankless is out and Seeds is in. And they finished last in their group in the fall split. And with the group ahead of them, I don't know if they have what it takes to get out of the group. They'll be fighting, I think, with Montevallo and Louisiana Tech for that 6th place spot. But they play up to competition well, and they can pull off a couple upsets and nab that LCQ berth. But underneath them, Florida State Gold, a new team to the SEL. It's Florida State's B team. So interested to see how they play this split of the spring semester, if Florida State just has that incredibly deep program, or if it's just another B team that's going to come in and really not do so hot on the bottom side of group. So keep an eye on the Seminole B team, but we do have to move now into the 3rd group, and this might be the closest group from spots 2 to 8, because the number 1 team I think has got it close to locked up, but 2 through 8, wide open. I don't really know how this group is going to end up. So without further ado, the group of 2 through 8. Number 1 is currently my favorite to win the entirety of the SEL. It's UTK. They finished in 3rd in the fall split, but made a key roster move. One of the only roster moves I think that definitively upgrades a team in the SEL this semester, with Hermes getting benched for Crisp. And if you're familiar with the RLCS at all, and you watched all the way back in RLCS X, and you really pay attention, you'll remember Crisp played on a roster called Only the Family, or La Familia, who made the grid in the spring split of RLCS X, which was top 16 NA. And they went 0-15 in the league play format there, but that's still RLCS experience, and Crisp showed it. If you watched my Monday Night Lights show match series last Monday, then you'll understand this. I'm probably playing a few of Crisp's highlights right now. This is a massive upgrade for UTK, and that, I think, bumps them from a 3rd place team to a 1st place overall team, because they're my favorite to win everything right now. But starting the 2 through 8 run in this group, Georgia State, no change, same roster that had a bad playoff showing, but an overall good group stage showing. I'm expecting big things from them this semester. I think they're a top 8 team in the SEL, and now they've got to go out and prove it. They could be a land team. And following them, UAH Blue. UAH Blue's making a change right now. Cozen coming up from UAH White to replace Camille in the starting lineup, which, again, UAH Blue played on Monday Night Lights, and they looked so good with Cozen playing at his A game. There were times where that wasn't the case and Clemson was able to take the series over them, but Cozen really showed what he's capable of if he's on his A game. So I'm keeping an eye on UAH Blue. They could make a run for one of the top 2 spots in this group, jumping over Georgia State, but we'll have to see. Underneath them, East Carolina, UNCC, and UAB. 3 teams that I kind of put in the same echelon in the SEL because I think their ranks are fairly close. ECU and UAB both made runs in the playoffs last split, making it to 9th through 12th after being on the lower side of their groups after the group stage finished up. But East Carolina's making a change, chillin', graduated, I believe, is what I was told, and Onyxus is making a return to the A team after playing on the #1 squad of ECU previously. So we'll see how that change affects them. UNCC replacing Easel with Knight, which I think is an upgrade based on how they've been playing so far. They made it to the South Regional in the CECC Southern Region qualifiers. So that just means they were better than LSU and Huntington College, unfortunately, but still a good showing from them. Then UAB not making a change, so I'm really interested to see how these 3 rosters stack up, really, because if I were to divide this group up outside of just 2 through 8 and UTK, then I would probably have UTK, Georgia State, and UAH Blue, then ECU, UNCC, and UAB in the next tier, and then LSU and the Full Sail Armada kind of on the bottom side. But I think LSU and FSA are definitely fighting for last chance qualifier spots and have the potential to make it happen, especially after Full Sail's recovery in the Sunday qualifier. For the SEL, they went 0-2 on Saturday and completely turned it around on Sunday. So they got potential. Doxa has left the team, so they're still running a 4-player roster, are the Full Sail Armada, and Hybrid's leading the charge. So we'll see if we can hop them above LSU, which I realized I did that out of order. I have LSU as the 7th place team, and then Full Sail at 8th place in this group. But LSU returning to the SEL. They played in Season 3, sat out the fall split, but they are back for this one. So we'll see how they perform in their SEL return. And the final group in SEL's Rocket League Spring Split, I'm just going to straight up call FAU's group because I think FAU already has this group locked up. If they play like they did in playoffs in the last semester, this should be theirs because they are, in my eyes, definitively the #1 in this group, and not because of any results in the last semester, but because they are more than likely returning Lil Stan in the lineup, potentially being subbed out for No Look Deadshot. We'll see what happens with that team, but at the moment, their group is full of chaos NB teams. So I think FAU, if they play consistently, should come out on top because the second best team that I've got in this group is the University of Georgia. Now I'm going to voice over this portion of the video because a lot has changed in the 5 days between initially recording this and now. And UGA is actually going to be playing with Carter in place of Matt, and that's the only change that they are making. Despite TJ's uncertainty about returning to the roster, they're still rocking pretty much the same core. So UGA should be just as good going into this spring split. So that's the change. I think they will definitely contest FAU in this group. This is no longer just FAU's group. Bruton Parker, and not the A team that played in CRL last semester. Due to SEL rules, only one of their CRL players can actually play this split, so it's going to be Soul, Agni, and Milk. Milk being the CRL sub, and Agni is a GC1. So Bruton Parker's a little all over the place, so I don't know really where to put them in this group, but I don't think they're going to be contesting FAU for the top spot in the group. We'll see, though. Northern Kentucky, fresh roster as well as BPC to the SEL, brand new this semester, and they're only returning one player this semester, Pig C, the captain. They were formerly playing with Toasty, the newly signed NRG pro, but he's taken a semester off to focus on the RLCS because that's what we would all do here. So Northern Kentucky isn't the powerhouse they were last semester, but they're still going to be a pretty darn good team in the SEL, and I've got them as a potential playoff team. Then, next up, UAH White. of course, losing Cozen like we talked about earlier, with Bop stepping up into the starting lineup. And UAH White, so far from what I've seen of them, have looked inconsistent. They've had bad showings. They went out 1-2 on Saturday's SEL qualifier, but then Sunday they upset Bruton Parker playing with their B team. So I don't know what UAH White's going to look like this semester. They're definitely a team that I didn't feel comfortable kind of ranking in this video, but had to do it. So they're at 5th in FAU's group, right above Arkansas, who have sadly lost SpongeBob G. Goober, one of the best names in the SEL, but they've replaced him with another solid name in Senile Luke, so I'm glad they're staying even on that front. Then UTK White, next up, it's a new team to the SEL, not the UTK-B team that we saw last semester, but a different Tennessee program trying to, I think, make it to the last chance qualifiers, what they're fighting for here. Alongside Clemson Purple, who is the Clemson B team, and they made a full roster change. Canovo getting the call up, and then the other 2 Clemson players no longer on this purple roster. So completely new roster to the SEL, but they made it through the qualifier. So we'll see how they fare in FAU's group. And there you go. There is an image of all the teams sorted into our 4 groups of 8 for the 4-week round robin play that'll feed into the last chance qualifier and the Elite 8. And I'm honestly hyped about this semester of the SEL. I think the top 8 are wide open. No one is really safe. Not even Florida State. They have not clinched anything except a tiebreaker that they would have to then play, win a series, and then they would have their spot on LAN. And that's if chaos happens. But they have not officially clinched a spot on LAN just yet, despite winning the fall split. So, to wrap up this first state of the SEL of the spring split, I want to talk about Valorant, who I don't give enough love to in the state of the SELs. But this is an important spring split for all the teams playing there, as well as they'll get to play on LAN alongside the top 8 Rocket League teams. So, I want to run down the point distribution. As it stands right now, the fall split top 16 finishers, 14 of them are returning for the spring split. So the 2 not returning, Kennesaw State and FAU. Kennesaw State's losing 14 points and FAU's losing 10, but the rest of them still competing for those 8 LAN spots. UTSA are winners in the fall split. They are going to maintain their 40 points. UNCC following them up with 32 points. They were our runners-up in the fall split. Then Georgia Tech and Louisiana Tech, the next 2 finishers, 28 points for Georgia Tech, 24 for Louisiana Tech. Then a pair of Florida teams, Blue and Orange, rounding out the top 6 with 18 points apiece. And with Clemson sitting at 14 points right now, that is our definitive top 7 at the moment in Valorant, with Kennesaw State forfeiting their 14 points by not competing. So they could potentially still make LAN if we have some crazy results in the spring split of the SEL, but it is pretty unlikely. UGA and FAU were the next finishers, 10 points for them, alongside South Carolina and Kentucky, 10 points for them as well. Then our final 4 finishers in Valorant were UTK Gray, shout out Sarah, TCU, Full Sail Armada, and Texas Tech. So those are the next 8 teams that are trying to jump up above FAU and KSU, definitely first, to try and grab one of those top 8 LAN spots. As of course, more information is going to be distributed about LAN coming up as the SEL spring split season gets going, but know it's going to be big. Fred's been leaking a lot of details to the staff, and so I'm very excited about the LAN come May. So that's going to do it for the first state of the SEL of the spring split. Hopefully this is going to be a weekly thing as I'm trying to get more consistent with these videos, but make sure you go to all of the new Esports SEL socials, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, the works. Make sure you follow us there for all of our videos and content, and I'll see you in the next State of the SEL.